don't know if you saw this. Did you see that the Houthis hit a building in Tel Aviv with a drone?
Yes, I did. Yeah, apparently it was just a few meters from the American consulate, right?
Mm.
And caused quite a bit of damage. I saw a video of it. It was a major explosion.
Yeah,
It
I did
wasn't just
too.
a
It was
little
just
pop or anything. It was something. It was quite a significant strike. And apparently several people were injured, and I think one person was killed, a settler who served as a sniper in the IDF.
a
And I
Belarusian.
probably shouldn't say that, but it's hard for me to shed tears for somebody like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not exactly an innocent if it's
Yeah, right,
a settler sniper. But yeah, it's pretty impressive that the Houthis sent a drone 1,400 miles away. Yemen is one
right,
of the poorest countries in the world,
right.
and they're able to send one of their little drones 1,400 miles, and it was undetected. That couldn't be
Right.
detected by Israelis air defense systems,
Uh-huh.
and struck the most populated advanced city in Israel, Tel Aviv. So,
Right.
like that, this is
Yeah,
just
no,
more of an
I
example that
right.
these drones are a real game changer, and I think
Right.
people don't understand.
Right. Well, yeah, they demonstrated, yeah, again, like the Iranians said earlier, that Israel's vulnerable. It was another reminder, and it's something. I mean, I think that's something that's it's penetrating the Israeli psyche, and with I think unknown consequences. I don't know how they're going to react to it. It's also a reminder of what they're going to face if they go to war against Hezbollah, because Hezbollah, is much more heavily armed than the Houthis are. That's my understanding. They have, quite an arsenal up there, and they're much closer. Right. I mean, this was from a great distance, and yeah, the Hezbollah is right across the border. So this had to take, an hour to get there or something. I don't, I'm not quite sure how long it took, but it would just be minutes for Hezbollah missiles and drones.
Yeah,
And
no, it
and
probably took 5 hours for this drone, I would
yeah,
say,
well, I think it was
right?
5 hours for the ones from Iran. Yeah, so maybe this was like 3 or 4 hours or
Right.
something. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, I'm waiting for something to pop off. But one thing that I feel that's interesting about this development with that Yemen, the Houthis were able to strike Israel, is that the Yemenis, the Houthis, they don't give a damn about
yeah,
we need to be careful or whatever. They have nothing. They have been
yeah,
destroyed and bombed by Saudi
right,
Arabia with U.S.
right. They don't
backing
really have any
forever.
infrastructure to lose, right?
Right. They're like, we don't, exactly. They have nothing to lose, which makes them, they're like, whatever, we'll just keep, they're like, oh,
Right,
we hit, it actually made it all the way over there. Well, let's just keep on sending more. What's going to
right,
stop them? There's no reason for
right,
them to have restraint.
right,
The U.S., the greatest military power in the world, the United States, came over to punish them and to stop
right,
what they're doing,
right.
and they failed
Right,
miserably. So
right. Spent
they're not
months.
scared.
Right. They spent
Right.
months, right, bombing the Houthis, right? And at the end of those months, actually, even fewer ships were traveling through the Red Sea than before. So,
Right.
I mean, that's just the very definition of failure. It was an abject failure on the part of the U.S. Navy. They lost. They were defeated by the Houthis. Let's
Right.
be honest.
No, these drones are really they've kind of flipped the script when it comes to
Right.
military power. It's like it's not easy just to have that dominance. I mean, we can just, we've talked about it before. You can have these drones that cost, 500, 1,000, $2,000, and then you would have to waste interceptor missiles that could cost millions to try to
Yeah.
take them down.
Right. A
So
Patriot interceptor costs $4 million, and you usually send two to strike a target.
Right. So it's like that means, that it's just a different game. It's a different world that we're in now. And I think people haven't realized that the amount of money you spend on your military or the amount of tanks you
Yeah.
have or helicopters is really irrelevant. It really is.
Right.
And now I feel like Yemen, if they did this once, don't you think they're going to keep on sending in drones into Tel Aviv or
Yeah,
into
well, if they
Haifa
have them, and
or
I think
wherever?
right. I think this one was like it was an Iranian drone.
He said it
Maybe
was a
something
modified
yeah, I think
Iranian
maybe
Samad,
modified by the Houthis, right?
Samad 3 or something like that.
Right.
Jaffa or JFFA. I F F A. I don't know what these things are. But.
Yeah, well, it's certainly true. Um, 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 yeah, well, it's certainly true. again, it's a reminder to the Israelis and the rest of the world of the vulnerability. One thing clearly, Israel has lost something they had, which was just air dominance. In an example, in previous wars with Hezbollah, Israel had air dominance. They completely ruled the skies. Hezbollah could not contest the skies. They fought very bravely and effectively on the ground and actually defeated Israeli ground forces, but they didn't have that air power. Now they do. They say, okay, maybe I'd say the Israelis are stronger. They have superiority, but they don't have dominance anymore. And that's a big difference. That really changes things.
I wouldn't even say they necessarily have superiority.
Yeah.
I mean, because...
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but let's say maybe they do, but they just don't, they clearly don't have the dominance. They just, that's gone.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that Israel could strike Yemen easily?
Well...
I mean, they couldn't strike Iran. The
Right.
thing is, what's different is that Israel went all in, and the United States as well. They go in on aircraft. They're
Right.
they're on the Air Force. But that's...
Right, it's
that
missiles
you bet on the
and
wrong
drones.
horse. It's drones, right? It's drones and missiles now.
Right.
It's not that you can't do a lot of damage with your F-16s and things if they can drop heavy payloads but they have a shorter range. You have to refuel them, and they're vulnerable to things like S-300s, S-400s.
Right.
Anti-aircraft.
They're very expensive.
Right, incredibly expensive, difficult to maintain. Require, obviously you have to have trained pilots and all this stuff.
Right.
You can, like we were talking about, you mentioned that guy in Ukrainian, some like 60-year-old man just in a little basement.
Right.
Piloting all these drones and dealing massive amounts of damage to the Russians.
Right.
Like that's the game now.
Yeah, you're right. He was holding up, I don't know, a whole battalion or something for weeks until they found
himself.
them.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So I don't think it's correct to say anymore that Israel even has superiority, military superiority. I mean, and neither does the United States. In my opinion, it's who can never create the most drones, which means it's China. China creates 90% of the world's commercial drones, which means it could turn those into military drones at a drop of a hat.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Well, so do you think that Yemen is going to start striking more into Israel if it succeeded once? Do you think they're going to keep going?
Yeah. There have been previous attempts. This is the first. I don't know if they didn't succeed in the past, or they didn't. I think they got through, but didn't inflict any kind of serious damage. Yeah, this is the first time that they inflicted serious damage. And maybe it's because they're using this new drone. If that's the case, I'm sure they're going to make every effort to acquire and manufacture more, and we'll see more of it. That'll just be another front, that Israel is going to have to deal with.
But how can Israel even counter? What are they going to do? What can they do?
Well, I think they have threatened to strike Yemen. But of course, I mean, the U.S. has been striking Yemen for months, and it just hasn't done anything.
Yeah, Yemen doesn't care.
What are they going to strike?
Right. Yemen's been struck by the U.S. and Saudi Arabia for decades.
or many years.
Almost.
Yeah.
How long is that the Yemeni genocide war been going on?
Let's see. It started maybe around the time of the Syrian war. Yeah. I would say like around 2010, early 2010s.
Right. So they've been, you got teenagers that they've been like, yeah, this is my whole life. That's my whole right. So yeah, we'll see. Here's another question then. Do you think that by the time Trump takes office, this Israel-Gaza conflict will be resolved, or do you think that it's going to be full blown? Like, where are we headed? It just keeps on.
I think we're headed in the same direction. I mean, Israel. You look at everything they've done; it's all pointing in one direction, and that is genocide. At the which maybe in its mildest form means ethnic cleansing, just pushing out those that they didn't kill, killing a minority, and then driving out the majority. Or just outright genocide. I mean, it's, we talked about that Lancet study that estimated the total number of deaths from the Israeli onslaught as 186,000. Right, and that was okay. That was maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago. It was based on, I think, maybe 35 or 36,000 direct deaths. Right. Now, I know John Mearsheimer did a very good job of picking apart that study. And, he says it's a very good study, but it's really quite conservative, because first of all, it's based on the figures that the Gaza Health Ministry has been supplying. And people have noticed, like, the rate of increase has slowed down quite a bit in the last 3 months or so. And there's a very good reason for that. It's just that they just don't even have the apparatus to keep track of deaths. They don't have it. The way it used to do is like people would bring, injured family members to the hospital, and someone would die, and their deaths would be recorded there. People would be brought to the morgue. These hospitals, a lot of them have just been completely obliterated. Others are just barely functioning. They just don't have the means of keeping track of the number of deaths. So the likely number, true total of direct deaths, again, people that have been killed by Israeli bullets and bombs is, he said 50,000. That's just an estimate, which would be, let's say, those people that haven't been recorded. Either nobody reported, the death to any authority, or because the body is under the rubble, one or the other. I think that's actually a very conservative estimate. Add an extra approximately 15,000, call it 50,000. And then you use their, they chose a multiplier of 4. And remember, it's 3 to 15, so they actually chose a very low multiplier. But even if we stick with that, so we're being very conservative, it could be quite a bit higher. It seems to me it ought to be higher in these circumstances, because there's been a deliberate effort, more than an effort. The Israelis have deliberately been destroying civilian infrastructure, those things that make life possible in Gaza. So it seems to me you should be using a multiplier that's closer to 15. But even if we use the 4, we get 200,000. And then you add the 50,000 direct deaths, you get 250,000 total. That's as of like 6 weeks ago. So we're on track. So I think that's a very conservative, very reasonable estimate. We're on track to, something like 500,000, 1 million. If it continues for several more months, that's where we're going. I mean, this, it really is. Sometimes, we get used to the word genocide, like, it's just, it's a term that's, I think, overused to describe, all kinds of conflicts and so forth. But I don't think it is here. I mean, we are talking about a literal genocide. It's happening right before us. And I think even a lot of us who are very, very critical of Israel really haven't let this sink in, what's happening. They are just killing off the Gazans, and they're doing it. It hasn't really, I don't know that it's even slowed down. It's certainly going ahead. We're just not getting the coverage that we used to.
And the Houthis are the only people with the balls to do anything about it.
Yeah, right. So, as Mark Sloboda says, this is arguably the most moral army on the earth. And I agree with them. I mean, I just say this is a completely moral cause. It's not even, about just defending yourself or, pursuing your own interests. It's just say, these are our brothers and we're not going to let them die. And like when it all is over, what are people going to say? Talk about the enlightened West, or, it's going to be these medieval wild men in Yemen who were the most moral people. The only ones who really did anything.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, if Israel, decides to go into Lebanon, or I feel like they're getting
and
more
it still
more
appears
desperate.
that's what they're going to do. I mean, it is heating. It's not like it's not a full-fledged war yet, but things have been heating up, steadily over the last couple of weeks, increasing exchanges of fire. And again, it's not like before. Yeah, the Israelis have been hitting a lot of targets, assassinating Hezbollah commanders, and frankly, destroying a lot of homes, and also hitting military targets on the Lebanese side of the border. But the Hezbollah can strike back, and they have been hitting targets, both civilian and military, within Israel, and sometimes doing extensive damage.
So you think it's going to pop off pretty soon?
I think so. I mean, it just seems to be heading that way, and then.
Well, if it does, then Israel might the situation that Donald Trump inherits, Israel might not be there might not be much left, and it'll just further damage Biden, and then Israel, and then hopefully Trump. I don't who knows what's going to happen. I don't want to get too far ahead speculating.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I was thinking that could potentially be helpful for the Palestinians is if Trump gets into office, then because the media and the left and the establishment hate Trump so much, all of a sudden they might start shining a spotlight on the atrocities that are occurring in Gaza and Palestine. Because right now the left doesn't do it. Because
that happens. I mean, libertarians point this out actually, and I think quite justly again and again. They'll see it's just like let's say under a certain president, under a Democratic presidency, they find the Republicans are on their side and are anti-war. And that's great. Mm. Then the Republican candidate gets elected, and all of a sudden there's this great flip-flop. All those Republicans who we thought were reliable allies and anti-war, well, it becomes their candidate's war, and it's therefore a good war. And then the Democrats all of a sudden remember that they're the anti-war party, and so they're going on marches again.
This is what's so frustrating about partisan politics. It's like, do you guys have no memory? It's silly. I just so stupid that people just dig in like, oh, I'm always voting blue, even when their party has completely evolved and changed into something different.
Right.
It's like, don't you have any core principles and values that can you think for yourself? And say that you're against war, you say that you want peace, then how are you supporting this? And as soon as Trump comes in, you're like, now we want peace in the Middle East now. It's like, come on.
Right. Again, that's the thing.
Joe Biden started this war.
Right. There are a lot of things that, when I was young, of course, I grew up in Berkeley. It was very leftist. And you could say I rebelled against that because there's a lot of stuff I didn't like. Rejected on principle. But then over time, I began to say, well, actually, they were right about some things, and especially, about war and about the deep state, the security, state. But it was just around that time when I was discovering, hey, the leftists are right about that. The leftists did a big flip-flop, and they all became defenders of the deep state and their wars.
Right. It's the same thing but
there's a principled left, that I do admire. But they are people again like Max Blumenthal and
Matt Taibbi
Taibbi, right? Yeah, these guys, and so I have great respect for them. But they'll be the first to tell you that they're hated by their, well, they just call them the liberals now, and they said they call them the liberals, but it's become a pejorative for them. I mean, these people that are just betrayed all their principles. Right. Yeah, so I think that's kind of, that's not a very detailed platform or anything, but that's sort of the general shape of things. And, very different from, past Republican administration. Before it used to be, it was about fiscal austerity, fiscal soundness, which I think is a good thing, unfortunately, but both parties have pretty much abandoned that, right? Mm-hmm. But the party of business, but really a big business, and the country club. That's what Republicans used to be about. But they no longer that party. Actually, country clubs and big business have gone to the Democrats. They really have. I mean, when you look at where donations are coming from and polling, you find people in those income categories and are largely Democrat voters.
Mm. Okay, well, let me just ask you one more question because I think I need to wrap it up and help my wife with the kids.
Okay.
Do you think Joe Biden is going to be the nominee, or do you think are they going to push him out?
Well, there are a lot of rumors that he may actually announce his withdrawal from the race in just a couple of days. And there are more and more people while it's slowed down, maybe it was just because of the attempted assassination. Nobody said anything for a while. But then in the past couple of days, the tempo of defections of prominent Democrats asking Biden to withdraw has picked up again. You see a lot of. I think he's going to step down.
Mm. Okay, well, it'll be interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to be someone that has to go against Trump right now. Not after he dodged a bullet and then,
Right, right.
I mean, just the whole pump that did it. And that was then I think that sealed the deal. Okay, Dad. I think we'll cut it a little bit short today because I think
Okay, no problem.
the kids are going a little crazy, so I
Sure. Yeah, I understand.
gotta go get to it. All right, thanks a lot, Dad.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, I'll just mention a couple of things.